that we have no current commissioners on the CFTC. We have no commissioners that are actually watching anything.
Hello and welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. On Friday, January 30th, the spot price for silver dropped a whopping 37% after what was called a statistically impossible event by metals and miners. Silver still closed January at over $85 per ounce, up from the December close of $71.29 per ounce. Today, Oren Elbaz and I are here with Illuminated Ape of Silver Wars and Wall Street Silver to discuss what happened and what this unusual event could mean for silver going forward. Welcome back, gentlemen. It's great to speak with both of you once again.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, excellent to be here. Thank you.
The recent huge drop in silver's price was likely an emotional event for many silver investors, and it was a good punch to the gut. But nothing has changed fundamentally for the silver market. And I'd also like to mention that silver closed last January at just $31 per ounce, so it has done very well over the last year. Mainstream commenters are saying the reason for silver's pullback on Friday, January 30th, was because Trump announced that he had picked Kevin Warsh to replace Jerome Powell as the new Fed chairman. But it turns out there might be more to it than that. What do you guys think about silver's historic pullback at the end of January? And what do you think about the excuse that it was because Trump had picked a new Fed chair?
My answer is going to be very unorthodox, probably compared to your fundamental answer, but I've been seeing this market very distinctly being a psyop. The price is being used as a tool of manipulation. Now, if you zoom all the way back, the chart looks great. But if you're looking really close in, it looks like a nightmare. It looks like, the previous peaks are now coming back down and you got to get out of this thing right now. But that's what they want you to think. We're probably going to hit back over triple digits, and then it's a crapshoot because it still is up to two things. Either apes sell or apes do not sell. If apes do not sell, there is no supply. And when there's no supply, things break. And that's the point we win.
Yes. I want to say, first of all, that this narrative, as though this sell-off is because Kevin Warsh was nominated as Fed chair. Well, it's kind of laughable because they tell you that he's a hawk. He's going to protect the dollar. Come on, we know that every Fed chair cuts rates and prints dollars when push comes to shove, when there's a recession, when there's a need to bail out the system, they always print, and I expect Warsh to do the same during the next recession. So that's not very serious. In regards to this current correction, I treat it as a correction. I don't think it's the top. I have this very long list of reasons why I don't think it's the top for silver, why I think it's just a very sharp correction. Now, the fact that it was so sharp, so quick, so, unusually when it happened, it was just a single day, the largest single day drop, I think, in the history of silver. I think I agree with Illuminated Ape that it was orchestrated to allow the banks to get out of their short positions. And I still don't know how long this correction will take. Will it be a short one or will it be a very long one? We'll have to wait and see. But I don't think it's the top.
Well, I mean, I believe it was JP Morgan that closed out like 600 and something short contracts on that day, exactly at the very bottom, very conveniently. But it's not really that many ounces at the end of the day. That's the problem. It wasn't, if they paid it $100, it still wouldn't have broken their bank because, as you adequately said, they have the power of money printing. They can just bail themselves out. So what was all of this all about? It means it for me, it's the perfect conditions to say XYZ happened because of XYZ. But if you look very broadly out, PSYOP.
I think that that's a
Yes.
good point. And you're right. Zoomed out, the chart looks great. It does seem like this was an attempt to shake out weak hands. And I saw a post about JP Morgan closing their short position, and it said it was 3.17 million ounces. So you're right. I mean, that wasn't a huge position that they closed, although it was in conjunction with when the market bottomed on Friday, which really makes me think that there was market manipulation involved. Maybe there was some other banks outside of them involved. I'm not sure.
I think it's like they're giving us the signs, the ones that can notice these things, that they are playing games. That's what we should be inferring from this, that there are games being played.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there another government shutdown coming?
Yes, a partial one unless something gets signed.
Well, if there is another government shutdown, then the COT reports won't come. And then you won't know whether banks are closing their short positions for quite a while. And under this cover, you could get this trend of covering shorts.
That is a very good point. And also to note that we have no current commissioners on the CFTC. We have no commissioners that are actually watching anything. So it doesn't matter. So they could shut down the government, they could play these games, but at the end of the day, even if the government wasn't shut down, no one's watching the hen house.
I see.
So they are set up to pull some shenanigans right now. To a layman observer or someone who is unfamiliar with the silver market, this could have looked like a market popping. If you were to compare this to previous rallies, what might indicate to you that this was not a natural topping event for silver?
I would say it's because they wanted to get hopes really high so that they could crush them really hard. And if you're very new to this and you haven't been around for the previous ups and then dips, then you're not a strong hand. And you will think, oh, I've gotten swindled by these hucksters that sold me this boomer rock. This is not fun. Time to sell it. And it so happened that this whale of a person took XYZ amount of ounces off some other boomer that was just getting out of it to sell, to get money for gold, which is, in my opinion, worth less because it's artificially pumped by central banks. So they're giving everybody multiple exits, but some of them are false exits. It's like the labyrinth when you get to the part where there's two doors and one leads to certain death. But only one is actually for salvation.
Yes, I see. I want to say that there are multiple indications that this was not the top for silver, and that what we're seeing right now, it's nothing like the 1980 top. And for instance, the fact that, in 1980, inflation was an old phenomenon. It broke out in 1965, and it was a 15-year long inflationary cycle, and they had three separate waves of inflation. And as a matter of fact, the price of gold and silver topped as the third wave of inflation was topping in the end of 1979, early 1980. But right now, inflation is rather a new phenomenon here in our days, because inflation only broke out in 2021 after COVID. So we are about 5 years into this inflationary cycle. So inflation is still new. We've only had one wave of inflation. I think we're going to have a few more. And so I don't think that this is anything like 1980. I want to give you a few more reasons why this is nothing like prior tops. Well, there's the fiscal situation. In 1979, the federal government's fiscal situation was much better. the debt to GDP ratio was only 31%, whereas today it is, over 120%. And right now, the federal government is spending $1.2 trillion per year just servicing its debt. So it's not as though we can have like a Fed chair who can, ramp up interest rates to 20% like Paul Volcker did in 1980 to kill this inflation. So what we're probably going to have this time is it's going to be just, this continuous inflation which is going to pour, more fuel on the fire and allow the prices of gold and silver to continue rallying for, I think, years to come. So I don't think we're anywhere in a similar situation to what we've had in 1980. And I think any comparison between today and 1980 is, it's misguided.
Well, going back to what you said, where it starts at 1965, if you think about it, that's right as the demonetization of silver happened, right? But
Right.
a lot of people get this idea that money is silver and the inflation is directly tied to there being a lack of silver in the money supply. But that's indirectly true. It's the lack of check and balance that was taken away at that specific moment because nature locked the government by how much they could issue and print and whatnot. And at that point, when that was gone, we've been in a slow boil ever since, and we just haven't jumped out of the pot. When in regards to silver, it just keeps dwindling from industry. And that's the whole reason why they demonetized silver and started this whole cycle of inflation is because they satisfied military demand and industrial demand to create the globalist modern technological world that is today, and they need silver in order to continue that control that they're trying to put over us. And we're at this point where they just don't have the supply they need. Ironically, we have it. And I just find that very funny that this whole train of events leads to us holding the key to their third temple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are some really good points. And that is interesting because 1964 was the last year that the coins were 90% silver, and then 1965, this all started. And in regards to people trading in their silver for gold, I really do think silver is underestimated at this point. Gold doesn't have nearly as many use cases, and I also don't think that that would be a good trade right now. And then I also think another thing people could consider when they're looking at the 1980 top is the inflation adjusted price for silver right now is way lower than it would be in 1980. It should be up around $200 an ounce. And when some people take into account the empty money supply, they say it should be even higher than that.
Well,
Yeah.
we don't know, really. It could be a lot worse, and they're holding the beach ball down on inflation. One of the first things that this administration revealed was that they have a computer that can just issue money. How long has that been abused? Where is the accounting on that? Now, this falls onto the audit the Fed, which has never been audited before. If national security would dictate that the Fed needs to loan money, I'm sure as hell believe that they're loaning money that we don't know about. So I just I just lost all faith in the system. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do believe that they're holding the beach ball down, and at any time they can just let that thing go, and we just can't afford groceries on one day, and that's why I hold silver, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of languages that name silver as money, so I would trust that more than gold.
They think that a lot of people are really going to believe that the dollar has lost all of its purchasing power if they see the price of silver go up. But what I think will really make people decide that the dollar's lost all of its purchasing power is if the cost for energy, whether it's electricity at their house or gas for their car, and groceries, food, get out of control. You had mentioned groceries. That's really going to be when people wake up,
But at the
in
end of
my
the
opinion.
day, this problem is just all could be solved in like a blink of a second by fixing the one problem that's causing all of this, which is the money. And the money is just solely dictated by an unconstitutional entity in which you can void all the debt by saying it's fraud. It's the simplest solution. And they have done stupider things.
I want to give you just a few more indications that I have here that this was not the top. Take, for instance, the gold to silver ratio. So in 2011, it bottomed at 32. And in 1980, it bottomed at 15. Okay, so this time it only fell to 43.5. So we are nowhere near the values that we've already seen in those past bull markets. And I would say that this bull market in silver is far more significant than 1980 or 2011. I think those were, both 1980 and 2011 were trial runs for what we're experiencing right now. Because back then, like if you think about it, in 1980, the entire concept of fiat currency was rather new. It only
Hmm.
existed for 9 years. Having, the entire global economy using a fiat currency as its reserve currency, as its reserve asset, that was something new, and I don't think people realize, all of the problems with this situation, with this system. Now we are after, decades of using fiat currency, and we know that it creates inflation, and we have the BRICS nations that are trying to break out of this system to establish their own monetary system, rival monetary system. So I don't think we're anywhere near the same situation like we were in 1980, and I don't expect it to end the same way with like this. Oh, it was a bubble and it popped and it's all over now.
No,
I don't think it's going to happen.
it can't happen because just based on the perspective that people are missing. In the 80s, it was the futures. And most people that in the futures were like the industry, the commercials, the bankers that were playing this game along with the Hunt brothers or the rich people. It was not a retail game. The retail sold into that bubble, and a lot of scrap was recovered into that bubble, and that allowed for industry as well as the American Silver Eagle program that helped supply the tiny supply of silver that was even back then that was struggling post the Hunt brothers squeeze. But then we go into 2011, and we still don't really have the internet momentum that we have today, where information is spreading, awareness is overloading uh, the tickers in a lot of ways, and people are actually focusing on physical. Uh, I used to play Command and Conquer a lot, gentlemen, and that game taught me that resources matter. And if your enemy doesn't have resources, it can't make things. And it's very simple. And for an effective squeeze of a manipulated market, you have to take away the supply, the real supply. And that's what I think is happening. Even if we don't do anything, if we just hold industry, everybody is panicking over this.
I want to point out, according to my research, there was a fundamental reason for the squeeze in 1980. It wasn't just a game which was played in the futures market. There really was a shortage of, or at least a deficit of silver. But the governments of the world still had huge like reserves of silver that they could sell into the market. That's exactly what they did.
Yep,
So there wasn't any shortage, at the end there wasn't a shortage because the governments dishoarded their reserves into the market because they didn't need them anymore because silver was demonetized. So I
exactly.
think again exactly the way you say it today is a different situation. They're going to try to make you believe that it's the same as prior instances in which the bull market in silver petered out. I don't think that's the situation. I think we've only seen, like the first leg up. Now, I don't know how long this correction is going to last, whether it's going to last for a few days, a few weeks, a few months, or perhaps a year or two. I don't know. But I do think that this was not the bottom. And eventually, we're going to see higher highs.
Yeah, those are some really solid points. There is a silver deficit now. The silver market has been in a structural deficit since 2021, and sooner or later, I do believe that this will catch up with the riggers. Um, as we say, they can print more money to bail banks out. They can do that, that have shorted silver, but they can't print more silver. And I also think that was a great point by IA. I mean, resources matter, and us just holding can really help, to push this market to the next level. Do you believe that the physical market will overcome the paper market soon? And are there any factors outside of just holding that you guys could see causing the physical market to take the wheel, so to speak?
See, that's a hard question because right now, with the market volatility the way it is creating a situation where small businesses, local coin shops are being affected and they're shutting down because they can't actually take on the risk of the price moving so sharply. If they buy at 100 and then it dips like it did and they lost $30, well, now they're out of business. And with the margin hikes keep happening on the COMEX, they can't really hedge it. So, the access to the retail market is actually getting tougher and tougher unless you're going for the big box stores.
I would say, just so people would understand the big difference between, for instance, what we had in 2021 in that on that squeeze event, that came from the retail market. Now we're having a squeeze in the wholesale market. And it's as though the retail market is being affected, but not exactly in the same way that you would expect. Look, we are seeing people selling into this market. We are seeing refiners having trouble dealing with that amount because they don't have enough capacity. And although there is some pickup, like people are buying more bullion right now. In the past few days, I have seen it pick up somewhat, but still, it's not as though the retail market is buying silver like I would expect in such a situation. It's still, look, if there was really enthusiasm in the retail market, then you would see the shelves of bullion dealers getting wiped out very quickly, and it's not happening yet. I mean, like bullion dealers are still open and they still have inventory. Maybe there's lack of certain products. Maybe there's a lack of like the big bars which have a lower premium, but there's still plenty of coins and there's still plenty of rounds and as long as the retail investor can buy an ounce of silver anywhere near the spot price, that tells to me that the retail investor hasn't really woken up to what's happening. And we'll have to wait and see if this correction is long, it's going to be prolonged, then and I think retail investors are again going to shy away from this market. I don't think but I think the real fireworks will only come once this correction is over. And then you're going to see some incredible things.
On days when there are big pullbacks, I just have to step back and remember that it just means if I choose to take advantage of that, I'll get more metal with my fiat currency than I would have a few weeks prior. And I mean, the silver market is much smaller than, other assets it gets compared to. So there's going to be more volatility in the market. Big jumps in the price, up or down, are just going to be more common. Is there any advice that you guys would give to silver investors, in particular people who are new to the silver market?
I would say buy and then don't look at the price.
That's a good one.
I would say that, whoever took our advice and bought it a year ago or 2 years ago, well, they have this peace of mind that they are already sitting on gains. So they need not worry too much about these shenanigans in at the COMEX because they are already sitting on gains. So perhaps slightly less gains than a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Short term,
Uh, uh,
short
eh,
term pain.
yeah, the advice I always give people is buy physical. Don't try to do it through an ETF, certainly not through a futures contracts or options or stuff like that. Don't use leverage. And then you are able to withstand the volatility. And we keep repeating this line that if you hold physical silver, you are able to withstand the volatility. It is not until you see the volatility with your own eyes, this, a 37% drop in one day that you are able to appreciate how good it is that you have the physical, and that means that you can't be, well, no stop loss order will be initiated, and you can't be shaken out of your position. So as
Ex-
long as you just sit tight on your physical silver, you're supposed to be fine. Just take a deep breath, relax, and as was said here, don't look at the price for a while. I think it's going to be okay.
exactly. Treat it exactly like a nest egg. Just sit on it and keep it warm, and just don't let the bankers have it.
Absolutely. And you'll be in the best position to do that if you don't use leverage. So, great advice, you guys. It has been announced that Trump is launching a $12 billion critical mineral stockpile to blunt our reliance on China. What sort of impact do you guys think this will have on the silver market?
All right, so this is a big one that I've looked into, and I see a real critical flaw, no pun intended. The fact that the form in which the government has access to buy and stockpile these critical minerals is limited. It has to be in specific forms that they have codified. And in this instance, where the refiners are backed up, they're not able, under the current law, probably to accumulate as fast as they could if they had no, codified law on what form the silver or any critical mineral was in. Say it had to be in concentrate or bullion bars. They couldn't buy it that way. They would have to buy it in other components that are codified. So I believe that that one change, if they get around to it, would help them. The DLA could just buy up all the scrap, all the bullion that's pending for all these refineries, and the government can get to refining it later, but they have it.
Right.
Interesting. So, as of right now, do you know what type of silver they are able to purchase for this?
If they are, it depends on where they are allocating it. So if it's a critical mineral for energy, then they're going to want it in a form in which they can then purpose it for say, the nuclear power grid. So that would be control rods that they would want to stockpile. But if they, say, needed it for missiles, then they would want to do batteries.
I see. So they only want to get it in its end use form already.
That's the purpose. Or they want to take a stake in the mining companies that are producing the future stock of the mineral. They're not doing it in a much more needed, urgent way of just grabbing anything they can, screw the price, just whatever they can conveniently get in a short period of time, because that's what our enemies are doing.
That would be much better if they were doing that. Absolutely.
I
Has
Just
want to
become,
point out that, I read the press release regarding this potential, hoarding of critical minerals, and it doesn't mention silver at all. And I think, it's
of
it's
course, why?
understandable. It's understandable that, even if they did want to start hoarding silver again, they wouldn't tell you because that would send the price, skyrocketing higher. So I think they're like dipping their foot in the water, as
I
they
would
say.
say the USGS should have never made silver critical. They blundered with that, and I like to think Silver Wars helped that along.
I think they couldn't help it any longer. It would be too conspicuous. But that they're not, talking or mentioning silver at all. I think they do want to start holding silver again, but they need to be very coy about it. They need to be very, they have to do it very carefully in order not to send the market skyrocketing higher. So they're going to have to do it, clandestinely.
Well, they have to because, this is also a brand new world for them because when they did this last time with the Silver Purchase Act and basically got China to demonetize their silver currency by selling it all to us, and we get about 2 billion ounces back then that somehow all goes missing in our stockpile through the last 100 years. Things are afoot, gentlemen.
Yeah, that is interesting. And maybe it was that they realized that they had kind of sounded an alarm bell by placing it on the critical minerals list. And it makes sense that they wouldn't want to keep it on the down low. So I think that those two points, kind of work well together.
But back when the Silver Purchase Act was a thing, we had fixed prices for silver and gold. The government set the price. It wasn't free market. So that's the environment that they're used to. So it kind of transitions pretty easily into psyop your own country.
Yeah. I just want to repeat something that I said last time on our last conversation. I propose to call 2026 the year of the government when it comes to silver.
Yeah, we're seeing that at least in the mining sector right now, with them throwing a bunch of fiat at any project that attracts and can produce them missile grade materials. Um, but I don't know why they have their head up their ass so hard when it comes to buying bullion or scrap or anything that will actually help them.
Yeah, it seems like they should just get their hands on anything they can, and they already have plans to make that refinery. Like, come on, why aren't they doing that? That's crazy.
Just do it silently. Don't tell the market. Give Congress classified briefings, something to that regard. And then you don't disrupt the market and you still maintain national security. It's a no-brainer. You've been
Right,
fucking us
absolutely.
forever anyway. Just don't tell us and actually do a good job.
Just start piling it up, and once that refinery's online, you can start, melting it down.
Makes sense.
I think what you're going to see gradually is that they're going to start stockpiling those, rare earth minerals, which, the average person can't just, you know, invest in them or hold them in its home. It's not practical. But it's going to start this way, and then, just nonchalantly, they're going to mention, oh, we're going to add silver to that. And it's going to be after the fact, after they've already started accumulating silver. And I think by the end of the year, it's going to be, fait accompli, that it's going to be a done deal that governments are hoarding silver. And by then, I wouldn't be surprised if the price is so much higher, but they're going to, at least at the beginning, try to do it secretly so not to attract too much attention.
Well, we got Venezuela now, so that's a lot of silver and gold, so and rare earth minerals, so that I guess helps. We got the mineral rights for Ukraine, so I guess that helps whenever that blows over. And if we just kick out the indigenous people of Greenland, we can just take their resources, right?
We don't have
Screw
to
the
kick them out.
screw.
There's not a lot of them, and you
We
can
call
just buy them off.
we'll just call it Eskimo
Exactly.
kisses and take their silver.
Yeah, we just got to make nice with them. But I mean, these are really strong signs that we are entering a competitive era with China, so somewhat of a gold war, or I'm sorry, a cold war probably for resources.
I
Um,
like it, the Gold War. Yeah.
but of course, we captured Maduro. So Venezuela, we're working on being able to control that country when it comes to the commodities that are coming out of there. The Ukraine's a great point. And Greenland, of course, we made that deal for Greenland. And I would say that was a victory for the United States. in this competition to have access to commodities.
Please buy some physical silver. Just hold it. I promise once you hold it, it's just going to feel good. It's going to feel right. I know this sounds like crazy talk now, but just 1 ounce, hold it, and it'll make me feel better because I worry about the future and I want everyone just to be okay. That's my gestalt.
Okay, I'm going to end this discussion by, telling you that 2 weeks ago we all seemed like geniuses, and now we look like fools again. Because as though because the mainstream is going to come along and tell you, oh, the bubble has popped and it's all over. Everyone just go home. Just sell your silver. It's not going to go anywhere for like 20 years. That's what they're saying right now, right? Um, you need to ask yourself who was right like 2 years ago. Like 2 years ago, nobody was talking about silver. We were talking about about silver. We were pounding the table that there's this physical deficit has been going on for several years, that it's going to explode at some point, and it did explode. Now we are right now at this point in which we broke out of a 45-year-long cup and handle formation, and I refuse to believe that this will lead to a 3-month-long rally, only a 3-month-long rally, and then it's going to, collapse and that's the end of it. I refuse to believe that this is the case. I think we started a multi-year bull market in silver, that what we're seeing right now is a correction. Again, I don't know exactly how long it will take, how long it will last, but I think later on, if not this spring, then perhaps towards the end of the year, you will see new highs in the price of silver. So just hold on the way you've been holding on thus far. Hold on to your physical silver. I think you'll be very pleased later on, but by the end of this decade, I think you're going to have, a very, very valuable asset in your hand.
I absolutely agree. This is the return of the Jedi Arc. Ja we have rescued Han Solo from Jabba's palace. Now we are going to kick the Empire's ass.
Absolutely. Well, we all appreciate your contributions to the silver community, Illuminated Ape, and your efforts are well worth it. I also agree with Orrin. This is not the end of this bull run. The announcement of a new Fed chairman is not a valid reason for the price action that we saw on Friday, January 30th. Well, folks, that wraps it up for this one. Check out the links for the Silver Hermit and Illuminated Ape in the description. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate each and every one of you. And wherever you are out there in the world, I hope you have an amazing day.